As the four intrepid adventurers made their way back through the strange caverns, the silence hung heavy around them. They passed once more through the White's chamber, its air still thick with pulsing magic that hummed faintly against their skin. The echo of a fight not long past. Beyond it lay the basin room, the still waters dark and unbroken, as though waiting for something or someone to stir them again. Step by step, they climbed the worn stone stairs, up through the cleft in the mountain, and emerged once more into the world above, where bones still lay scattered in solemn silence, a pale carpet of history beneath the open sky. Each of them paused, gazes flicking across the desolate expanse. What they had found, what they had faced, lingered not just in their minds, but in the weight of the keys now hanging from their belts and the strange glow of the celestial compass. What did it all mean? What lay ahead? Those were questions for another day. For now, the wind carried with it the memory of warm firelight, the clink of mugs, and the low hum of song. The Nicodranis Tavern was calling them home. Levo, Tarak, and Zenith were back in the swamp, sunlight glinting off the stagnant waters. The sun was high, though none of them could say for certain how long they'd truly been below the mountain. A day, at least, maybe more. Time had twisted strangely in that place. Ahead lay the path Nemin had first led them down, once thick with wolves and the layers of bloated spiders. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and rot, and the distant drone of insects filled the silence between them. "We'd better be careful," muttered Pimin, his eyes scanning the overgrown trail ahead. His hand hovered near the pommel of his sword. The dead we left behind may have drawn other things to feed. He paused, one boot scuffing against a gnarled root. Then he nodded slightly back towards the shadowed silhouette of the mountain and its hidden stairs. "But nothing we can't handle. What's a wolf compared to what we faced down there?" The others said nothing, but their expressions told the tale, of flickering shadows, screaming shades, and ancient riddles bound in moonlight. They pressed on, the swamp swallowing their footsteps as the path wound towards whatever lay ahead and whatever stirred behind them. Bandit ambush on the swamp path. The company moved cautiously beneath the canopy, where the sunlight barely filtered through the tangled branches. When it did break through, the warm rays on their faces offered a momentary comfort from the damp, clinging swamp. They rounded a bend in the path and froze. There, sprawled in the dirt, lay the body of a merchant. Thick, dark red blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the earth. His pack lay torn open, goods scattered across the trail. Flies buzzed lazily in the humid air. Zenith, ever impetuous, strode forward without pause, eyes locked on the corpse. Whoosh! A rope trap snapped tight around his leg, and in an instant, he was hoisted upside down into the trees. The sharp clunk of something heavy dropping from the underbrush followed immediately after. Levo was the first to react, his keen senses catching movement in the undergrowth. He raised a paw, magic crackling down his arm. 3 glowing missiles of force leapt from his fingers. 2 slammed into a hidden bandit crouched near a fallen log, knocking him backwards with a cry of pain. The 3rd missile struck another assailant attempting to stay concealed. "Ah!" the bandit grunted as the blast hit home. That was the moment the ambush fully revealed itself. The injured bandit charged, scimitar raised high, aiming for Levo. The blade sliced the air, narrowly missing Levo's face but shaving hairs from the top of his ear. Another bandit loosed a bolt from his crossbow, but still unsteady from the blast, the shot went wide, whistling harmlessly over the party's heads. Zenith, now swinging upside down from the tree, growled in frustration. With a swift motion, he pulled himself upright along the rope and, gripping his axe, hacked through it in a single clean blow. He landed on his feet in a crouch, elegant, ready. Pimin, seeing Zenith under attack, moved fast. He had no time to unsling his shield. Instead, he gripped Tulip, his longsword, with both hands. "Swift and sharp, my dear Tulip," he whispered. Tulip answered. The sword cleaved clean through the nearest bandit's neck, the man's head tumbling to the side, eyes still wide in shock, before the body crumpled in a heap. At the rear, Tarak watched the fight unfold. He took a step back into the woods and melted from view, turning invisible with practiced ease. The 2 remaining bandits saw Tarak's horrifying visage. They headed into the trees. Terror took them, aging before the party's eyes, hair greying, eyes wide with panic, limbs trembling. As a horrible, eldritch fear gripped them, with cries of fear, they turned and fled. But the adventurers did not let them escape so easily. Levo, still crackling with arcane energy, extended his paw once more and unleashed a ray of sickness. The green-black energy caught one fleeing bandit in the back, and he collapsed mid-sprint, vomiting and convulsing. Zenith loosed an eldritch blast, catching the last one, while Pimin surged forward and finished him with a clean strike across the chest. The body hit the ground with a final thud. All fell quiet. From the tree line, Tarak reappeared, calmly as if he'd simply stepped out for a moment. He retrieved a discarded pack, dusted off his sleeves and walked back to the group as though nothing had happened. But inside, his mind raced. People feared him when he vanished. When he became something else, he'd seen it in their eyes. The Nicodranis Tavern, that night. The party arrived at the Nicodranis Tavern well past sundown. The last of the patrons, a weathered sailor humming a sea shanty, tipped his hat as he departed, the door swinging closed behind him with a soft chime. The warmth inside greeted them like an embrace. Hearthlight flickered across polished beams, and the scent of spiced meat and wood smoke filled the air. Nicodranis herself welcomed them with open arms and a knowing smile, wiping her hands on her apron as she ushered them towards their usual table near the fire. "Sit, sit. You look like you've stared down the gods themselves," she said, already bustling to the kitchen. Moments later, she returned with platters of scented meats, spiced and roasted vegetables, and foaming tankards of ale. The food was simple, but made with such care, it might as well have been a feast. "Courtesy of Mr. Cloudmantle," she added, placing a bowl of honeyed carrots in front of Tarak. "A halfling will never let another go hungry." She folded her arms with a touch of pride, then softened. "The beds are ready for you upstairs, whenever you're ready to fall into them. There's hot water for washing, clean linens, and enough blankets to chase off the grave chill. It's good to see you back safe and sound." There was a quiet strength in the way she spoke, firm but caring. She handled the tavern like a captain at sea, steady at the helm even in stormy waters. And that smile of hers, warm, easy, disarming, could coax a confession from a bandit or lull a restless soul to sleep. For the first time in days, they felt the weight of exhaustion pressed down like a blanket. But here, with firelight dancing on the walls and the smell of cinnamon and cloves in the air, they felt something rare on the road. It felt like home. Livo, Zenith, and Tarak went to the loft where they had slept last time, the fragrance of lavender and rose petals wafting over them like a lullaby. They slept. Even Tarak managed to switch off for a while. Morning at the Nicodranis Tavern. Morning broke softly over the marshlands, and golden sunlight spilled through the slatted shutters of their rooms. The scent of baking bread, citrus, and strong tea wafted upstairs, accompanied by the distant clink of mugs and murmured conversation below. Downstairs, the tavern was quiet but alive, morning patrons sipping broth and porridge in the early light. Nicodranis offered a nod and a smile as they descended, already preparing trays for a second wave of hungry travellers. In a quiet corner near the hearth sat Nemin, hunched slightly over a steaming mug. His travelling cloak was draped over the chair beside him, his wide-brimmed hat resting on the table, still dusted with road and rain. He looked up as they approached, and his expression lightened. Relief, curiosity, and a flicker of concern crossed his face in quick succession. "Well, look what the mountains spat back out," he said dryly, though the warmth in his voice betrayed his words. He gestured for them to sit, pushing a small bowl of candied nuts toward the center of the table. Levo and Tarak took a couple. Zenith, unsubtly, placed the bowl into a pocket in his cloak and seemed to just disappear. "You've been gone longer than I expected," Nemin continued. "Did you find what you were looking for? More importantly, did it survive the finding?" He leaned in, voice lowering just a touch. "You've seen the lunar shades, haven't you? I had my suspicions, but even I didn't think they still haunted the compass chamber." He glanced around the room, then back at them, eyes sharp and expectant. "Well, what did you uncover in that place? What secrets still lie buried in Bundoors' grave?" Nemin listened carefully, his brow furrowing as the company recounted the strange chamber, the lunar shades, and the celestial compass, its spinning needle, the glowing symbols, and the flashes of magic that seemed to react to each discovery. At the mention of the 3 locations, Mirror Lake, Flaming Hollow, and the Fallen Star Shrine, his expression shifted from curiosity to something more grave. "I've heard tales," he said softly, almost to himself. "Old songs, really. Half-lost things from before the ink dried on the kingdom's maps. 3 trials, 3 keys, each tied to a primal force, reflection, flame, and the heavens." He drummed his fingers once on the wood of the table. "If the compass showed you those symbols and the needle snapped south, it means the grave is listening. It's awakening." He looked up, his eyes hard now. "But the way is sealed. You'll need all 3 keys. Not just objects. No. Each trial demands a test. Strength of will, clarity of self, the ability to face what stares back from the mirror or roars from the flame." He leaned forward again. "You've uncovered the path, and that alone is no small feat. But the true journey begins now. Find the keys. Survive the trials. Only then will the grave of Bundoor the Bound open to you." He paused, then offered a thin, wry smile. "And if you die doing it, well, at least you'll be in interesting company." Nemin leant back, lost in thought for a moment, as the fire crackled beside your table. "You know, I just remembered something. Years ago, I met a traveling bard near the coast, a strange one, silver eyes and a voice like honey over steel strings. She spoke of many things, most of them soaked in metaphor and mead, but one tale struck me. Didn't think much of it at the time, just thought she was being dramatic. You know how bards can be." At the word bard, Zenith shifted slightly in his seat. Not much, just a small shudder, quickly hidden. But Nemin noticed. His eyes flicked briefly to Tarak, whose jaw had tightened. Nemin's voice softened. "She sang of a lake of mirrors and a shrine hidden deep in the plains. Said it only reveals itself on the summer solstice when the constellations align and the veil between worlds is thinnest." He reached to pick up a piece of candied ginger, but the bowl wasn't there. Nemin gave a small shrug and continued. "According to her song, the shrine lies some 30 miles south of the Lantrell Farmstead, past the old goat trail that winds through the fog-touched plains. Normally there's nothing there but wind and wildflowers, but on that one night, she said, the lake reveals its secret." He glanced between you all, gauging your reactions. Could be myth, could be memory. With bards it's hard to tell the difference, but with what you found so far, I'd wager there's truth in her tune. He leant in again, lowering his voice just above the crackle of the fire. "If that lake reveals its secret only once a year, then you don't have long. The solstice is just 5 nights away." Levo stood up. "Then let's go," he said, excitement in his voice. "But I've never ridden a horse before." Journey to Lantrell Farmstead. With your course set, the adventurers left behind the familiar comfort of the Nicodranis Tavern, its warm hearth and scented stews already feeling like a memory. The road east was quiet beneath the morning mist, birdsong drifting on the breeze, and the soft clop of hooves accompanied your journey to the dock 5 miles away. Zenith and Tarak had ridden before, though, curiously, the horse assigned to Tarak shied away at first, until Nemin stepped in with a whispered word in the beast's ear. Whatever he said worked. Tarak was soon mounted, albeit with a suspicious look cast towards his steed. Levo, never having ridden before, took to it like a natural. He guided his horse with ease, even grace. "I think this horse likes me," he called over his shoulder, cantering playfully ahead. Pimin and Nemin rode together in the rear cart, the creak of wheels and hum of conversation accompanying them under the warm afternoon sun. There, moored at the edge of the estuary, waited the Duke's barge, a stout, wide-decked vessel adorned with faded blue pennants and polished brass railings. Its captain, a weather-worn man with wind-bitten skin and a voice like gravel, gave a curt nod and motioned you aboard without ceremony. The boat ride was short, just long enough to sit, breathe, and listen to the rhythm of the oars and the hiss of the wind in the sails. Mist curled across the water's surface as the marshlands drifted by, slowly giving way to the open plains of the south. By midday, you disembarked on the far bank, where golden grasses rippled under the sun like an ocean of wheat. The road ahead stretched dry and straight into the horizon, leading directly into the vast, beating heart of Lantrell Farmstead. Sprawling across 60 miles in length and 15 in width, Lantrell's lands were a living tapestry of tilled soil, orderly orchards and slow-moving herds. As you rode south, the scale became breathtaking. Workers moved steadily through rows of crops, harvesting and tending with calm efficiency. Cattle lowed in the distance. Oxen pulled loaded wagons between barns and silos. The sun shone down on what might well be the stomach of the realm. It is said that Lantrell Farmstead feeds 3/4 of Barraran, and now, seeing it with your own eyes, you believed it. As the road narrowed and the fields pressed closer, a grand shuttered house came into view. Large, weathered but solid. It stood like a citadel among the crops, not proud in ornament, but assured in presence. A farmhouse, yes, but as sturdy as any castle. And at its heart stood John Lantrell himself. You might not have noticed him at first. No guards flanked him. No golden threads trimmed his cloak. No circlet of wheat and iron rested on his brow. Instead, he wore a rough-spun cotton shirt, mud on his boots, and a straw hat shielding a sun-lined face. He laughed with the field hands, slapped backs at the stables, and rode a battered old mule instead of a fine steed. But every wagon here bore his crest. Every worker nodded as he passed. Every merchant in the realm prayed for his harvests. He may well have been the second most powerful man in Barraran, but you'd never know it by looking. "Welcome, gentlefolk," he boomed, in a voice trained to rise over the clatter of ploughshares or the rumble of heavy wheels. He ushered the party inside. The farmhouse was a curious blend of luxury and purpose. Beautiful vases stood beside battered tools on cluttered shelves. Exquisite oil paintings hung on the walls, but they were pinned with handwritten notes and farming rosters. Expensive things lived here, but they worked just as hard as the rest of the house. You were seated at a broad oak table draped in a red and white gingham cloth. At its center, a glazed clove-studded ham, still steaming. Wheels of cheese, each of a different variety, sat with knives driven into them. Bowls of fresh-cut fruit, plates of wholemeal bread warm from the oven, and crockery, both mismatched and well-loved, filled the space. A maid entered with a small wooden cart, placing 2 bottles of dark red wine beside a small barrel on the side table. She added polished wine glasses of different heights and several tankards, gave a graceful curtsy, and exited without a word. The smell of rosemary, smoke, and citrus filled the air. They all tucked in. The company were far from the cities now, far from the ruins, the taverns, and the whispered rumors of keys and shrines, but you could feel it here too. The undercurrent of something moving, a world that needed you. And perhaps, just perhaps, John Lantrell would have a part to play in what comes next. Suddenly, the door burst open. A small, middle-aged man stumbled in, panting, his cheeks flushed red with urgency. Sir, he gasped. "There's a troop of 10 bandits headed this way, and they look serious." John Lantrell stood up from the table, a chunk of mature cheese still clutched in one hand. "Tell Marge to shutter the windows," he said calmly, already moving. "Where's my troop, Barty?" "They're at home, my lord. Painting the barn today. You sent them home early, remember?" John paused, the wheels in his head turning. Then, with a glance toward the halfling wizard, he nodded. "I may be in need of you this evening, Nimin." The halfling rose, brushing crumbs from his robes and grabbing his staff. "Not a problem, old friend. I have a feeling it's us that brought them to your door." Without another word, the 2 men stepped briskly through the door, the farmhouse suddenly far quieter. Zenith, as calm as ever, reached forward and casually picked up 6 forks from the table, slipping them into his cloak, with the practiced ease of someone very used to doing this sort of thing. Tarak noticed. He had noticed before. "Do you really think stealing forks from a man as important as John Lantrell is a good idea, Zenith?" Tarak asked, exasperation creeping into his voice. Zenith gave him a crooked smile and shrugged. "I think he's got more than forks on his mind." Without another word, he turned and left, scanning the farmhouse for high ground or a narrow opening with a view. His eyes landed on a barred shutter. He moved swiftly, unlatched it, and peered out across the golden plain. From this vantage point, the road was clearly visible. A trail of dust in the distance, faint but growing, marked the bandits' approach. Tarak and Levo joined him, silently taking in the scene. The wind tugged gently at the shutters. The bandits were coming. They rode into the courtyard as the sun was beginning to set. The one who looked the cleanest spoke first. "You have something we want," he barked at the house. John opened the door. "You will get off my property this instant. I have the Duke's guard at my disposal." It was then Zenith thought, "There's going to be a fight. They're not getting the compass, and they're not going to leave." He raised his hand and a magical blast struck a bandit square in the chest. With that, he vaulted out of the window, much to Tarak's and Levo's surprise. Chaos ensued. Zenith hacked another down as they charged. Pain tore across his chest as another attacker ran in, but the warlock within him stirred, and his rebuke burned the man with hellish fire. The bandit leader charged at the farmer at the door, just as he was encompassed in a cloud full of spinning daggers, cutting and slashing as they whirled magically in the air. Levo summoned his wild magic. It coursed down his arm, crackling, as 3 glowing fire missiles streaked across the courtyard and slammed into the leader. Levo was trying to protect John from harm. Tarak thought back to the woods and how the bandits had reacted. Maybe these will be the same. He leaned against the wall and turned the amulet. His body shimmered and became ethereal as he passed through the wall, appearing directly in the bandit's path. With his unearthly glow and the failing light behind him, he was impossible to miss, which, for them, was bad news. Apart from the leader, they broke. They gave up the fight and fled, screaming and howling into the dusk.